Hi, and I want to welcome you to Shiloh Baptist Church and Evergreen Christian Academy here at Shiloh, located in Saraland, Alabama, a suburb of Mobile. It is my joy and honor to welcome you. I'm Robert Lutz, the pastor here, and by default also the school administrator. I've been asked to put together a couple of videos that will help explain homeschooling and what homeschooling is all about, and also some particulars regarding Evergreen Christian Academy, what we call ECA for short, ECA at Shiloh. And it's estimated that 1.6 to 2 million children are being taught at home by their parents, and the number, by some estimates, is growing between 7 and 15% a year. Now, when you are looking at this video, the chances are good you are considering homeschooling your child. It may or may not be for you, and you don't know yet, so you've got a lot of questions, and you're trying to sort of figure out where you're at. Well, the good news is these couple of videos that we're going to be doing, and in case you stumbled across them on YouTube, you will also be able to find them on our website at shilohsaraland.com. If you tab on the Evergreen Christian Academy logo there, you will see our school, and these videos will be posted there. This first video tells you about homeschooling, some of the things, generic rules. Doesn't matter if you come to Evergreen Christian Academy or ECA at all. It doesn't matter on that. We're going to tell you some particulars regarding the state of Alabama and some of the things you need to know. The second video are things that are particular about ECA Shiloh, and those things will help you make a determination as to which group you need to be a part of, and I'll explain that more in detail in just a moment. We call it a covering. So when you do it, the first question that has to deal with is, where do I begin? You're going to be doing a ton of research, and that's where you're at right now. You're trying to determine, A, if homeschooling is for you or not. And so there are several things you're going to have to research at the same time, including the legal processes. What does the state of Alabama require and all that? Also, you're going to be looking at researching curriculum as to which curriculum best fits your child, the style of teaching you're going to do. There's a multiple style of teaching things. You're also going to have brought in some questions that you still want answered, things like the socialization component. And also, you got to decide a group association, what we call a covering, and you're going to have to research all those and see which one best fits your needs. And then the last one is determine what I call the family ability, and that is your ability, your willingness. It's not so much your smarts. Anyone can do homeschooling, but it's your willingness to do whatever it takes to make this work for you and your family. It also is determining your children's ability. Is this something that's a fit for them? Because homeschooling is not a fit for everyone. Homeschooling is one of three avenues in which you can do education. You have public school, which is very traditional. You have private school, which is not bound by some of the rules and regulations that the state has set forth. Also gives freedom for them to be able to do things that you would not be able to do otherwise. And then finally, there's homeschooling, which gives you the greatest amount of freedom, but also the greatest amount of responsibility. So let's begin with, what are the legal requirements and how does one begin homeschooling in the state of Alabama? Well, very simply put, there are three ways in which you can do homeschooling in the state of Alabama. The first way is to hire a tutor. And the state has things that are set forth. There's requirements for that tutor. They have to have certain credentials. They have to meet certain days during certain hours for so many hours. And it's very, very stringent. The second is a relatively new way, and that is to be able to set up your own private school. Now, it's so new. The legislation was only passed in 2014. I don't know anyone who's tried it yet, mainly because we don't know the processes that it's going to take to set up a private school in your own family, what the county is going to require you to do to make that happen, if you have to get business license. I don't know any of that, nor does anyone else that I know of, and I've talked to several people. But then finally, and this is the most popular way, probably 99%, just by guessing what I've seen and heard, 99% of the people sign up with what we call a homeschool covering. And basically, a homeschool covering is a private school that recognizing homeschooling as their educational venue. For instance, we are Evergreen Christian Academy. That is our school. By the state of Alabama, we're seen as a private school. And what you do is you sign up with this group, and it's mainly done through churches. It can be done through other nonprofit organizations. It doesn't have to be churches. But most people do it through churches. And they set it up as a ministry where they allow parents to sign up in their school, and then the church recognizes them as a homeschool. So you have to sign up in the state of Alabama. Now, these requirements vary from state to state, but the state of Alabama requires that you sign up with a covering. When you sign up, there are forms that you have to fill out, and each covering has their own requirements. But one of the pieces of paper that you will be signing and that we help you with is signing a piece of paper that notifies the local public school system that you are going to be with this school, Evergreen Christian Academy, or whatever school you choose to be a part of. Now, the other thing that's required by the state of Alabama, and this is the only other thing they require, is that you keep an attendance report. And it's very simple. You typically try to do 180 days a year. The legislation also changed some on that recently, but basically if you do 180 days of education a year, you're going to be pretty safe in everything. And so you have to fill out an attendance saying that how many days you missed. Now, typically homeschoolers go more than 180 days, so it's not an issue. The reason they go more than 180 days is, let's say you need to do something on a Saturday. You have the ability to meet on Saturday. You can go at night. You can do it during the day. You can do it all up front and do it in basically 6 months if you want to, and have another 6 months off. It's your call. You're doing the homeschooling. All you got to do is say, I'm going to do it. Now, that's a state requirement. Now, each homeschool group or covering has their own requirements. They all have to adhere to these couple of requirements. You got to notify the public school system, and you're going to have to keep an attendance report. As I said, that's the only thing the state requires. But other homeschools, and I will deal more with that in others, we have our own set of requirements, and they vary from homeschool organization to homeschool organization. The second question a lot of people ask is, well, then what's a co-op? Is a co-op and a covering the same thing? No, they're not. A co-op is where teachers come together, or parents come together, I should say. Parents come together and they share in the responsibility of teaching their children how to homeschool. And what it's mainly used for is to help parents who are weak in a certain area. For instance, my strong suit's math. But someone else's strong suit may be English, and mine's weak in English. I'm not the best writer in the world. I do some of it, but I don't know how to teach it at all. I could teach math, but I can't teach English. So we might pair up together, and they teach the English part, I teach the math part, and right there we've cooperatively come together to help teach our children, so we call that a co-op. And there are co-ops, and what happens is you have to be a part of a covering, and then the co-ops that you sign up to be with, where the parents come together and share in the responsibility of doing it, that is secondary. Now, for us, you have to be a part of the covering in order to be a part of the co-op. And we typically meet on Thursdays. In the state of Alabama, you see them typically meet 1, maybe 2 days a week, not more than that. Other states, they meet 3 days a week. You don't see that so much here, and that could change, but right now that's sort of the trend in the state of Alabama. But what happens is you got to decide, do I want my child to be a part of a co-op? And roughly about half do and half don't. Here at ECA, we've got about well over 150 families signed up through our covering. We got about, I think, 175, somewhere around there, last time I checked. And we got 75 families in our co-op, and that number fluctuates from semester to semester, but that just gives you an idea where we're at. And they come together and they cooperatively do it. No one's paid to do the teaching unless it's a specialized area, say like gymnastics, or if we wanted to go out and get someone who specializes in an area, then those teachers may charge a fee, but those coaches may, or whatever. We typically, for the most part, use parents. They volunteer their time and they teach the kids, and then other parents will teach their children as well. So they're not one the same, and you need to check into it if you're looking to a co-op or a covering, or both. The second question, or another question that most parents have for us when they come and talk to us is, what curriculum do you use? Well, that's the beauty of homeschooling. Some homeschool organizations specify a homeschool curriculum. We do not. And there are a lot of options out there, but before you can get into which curriculum to use, you've got to ask yourself, what style of learning is appropriate for my child? For some, it's a conversation. For some, it's using textbooks. For some, it's dealing with a trade. There's all kinds of avenues that are open to you, doors that open, which actually makes it sometimes harder because there's so many avenues, you just try to figure out where to begin. Well, some of the more popular ones that our parents use is a Becca. You'll see a Becca all over, and they're more like the private school. They use the textbooks and all that. Others are Alpha Omega, Sunlight, Sonlight, Horizons, Saxon. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and the reason for that is they play to a certain strength so much that it also is their weakness. For instance, one may be heavy in reading to the weakness of math, whereas another one may have a strength in computer skills, but they don't have any textbooks. So it's more of a personality type decision. And so you're going to spend the bulk of your research in this one. Of all the time, this is going to be it. You're going to deal with everything from, you can use workbooks, textbooks, computer-based, and there is even some where they take an internet-based classroom. I know one kid, he sits there and he's on the internet. They meet at a certain time. The teacher meets with about 10 kids at the same time. They all log in, and they can see all 10 through their webcams. They can see all 10 of these kids, and they teach it just like a regular classroom, but it's being done over the internet. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive than, let's say, the cheapest way is to get workbooks. You can go to any store and buy some workbooks and work through it. You need to allow probably for at least, people say, how much time do I need to allow to do my curriculum? Most of the time, I mean, some days you're going to get done really quick. Some days it's going to take you a lot longer than you had hoped. But on average, it's going to take between 3 and 4 hours a day to do it. And by the way, some will say, well, how can y'all do it so much shorter than a public school? Well, they got things they got to deal with, and you will too. But we don't count them toward education, and neither can they. And that includes like your lunch periods. And they have to include time to go to the restroom, their water breaks. They have to account for taking attendance and all that. I mean, there's a lot of more administrative things they have to do in the schools that you won't have to do in necessarily a homeschool organization. But you're going to be taking the bulk of your prep time is going to be deciding which one. Now, the good news is, if you go to any of these websites of these curriculums, most of them, not all of them, but most of them have an avenue where you can test your child to see where they're at, let's say in math and in reading and English, and they will make a recommendation as to where you need to start. And so you can do a simple eval, take it, and you got to learn what the personality, does your child do well with computers? If they don't do a computer-based one. Do they like to do textbooks? And is there something you want to emphasize in their life, then that has to decide. So there's a lot of different processes into that decision. There's not an exact science to it. We don't, endorse one over the other. In fact, I will tell you, my own family, we got 3 different types of curriculums running at the same time. We have 4 kids going through this, and they all have different needs. So even within a home, you can have multiple venues. Another decision you got to make is deciding on your group association. What happens is you got to decide what needs you have that need to be met that will make your experience of homeschooling successful. For instance, some need a little bit more accountability than others. And as a result, you'll want to be a part of a group that maybe offers a little bit more accountability. For instance, some will require that you meet and turn in grades once a quarter. Some will say you got to meet quarterly. Some will say you need to meet yearly. Some will say, hey, you don't really need to meet at all. Some will say, hey, I need more socialization for my child. or I want those social components. And so when you're checking out the different home group organizations, that's one thing you have. Now, the advantage to the bigger groups, and ours is considered one of the bigger groups, is the fact that you have more socialization availability. There's more things to do. For instance, we have a beginning of the year party, an end of the year party. We have once a month field trips, typically. We have once a month activities for different age groups. We have mom's night out. And then there's other opportunities where we have like talent shows, graduations. We have other events that go on all through the year. And the question is, do you want your child to be involved with those things? And so what you do is you look at it. Some require that you do it. Some say it's optional. We're pretty much more of an optional organization. And those will help you determine which one's best for you. And so I'm just going to tell you, if you're brand new to this, to make the decision whether or not to homeschool is not something you typically make in a real quick. Unless you were brought up in homeschooling, there's a process that has to take place to decide if homeschooling is really for you or not. It's not an easy decision. It's not one that's oftentimes come too lightly. Sometimes there's many different reasons. Some are frustrated because of the educational standards that schools have. Some don't like Common Core. Some love Common Core, and I'm not here to say for or against. I'm just saying that's up to you. Another one, sometimes special needs, that gets into a whole new arena. And some feel like that maybe they can cater to their child's needs more than a public school can. I don't know. That's up to you. Some say my child's so gifted, their ability to learn, they're growing at a faster rate and the school system can't keep up. They're keeping my child back. Those are all very valid reasons. And sometimes parents just get to the point where they say, I feel like I would do a better job than maybe the public school. Maybe I won't. They don't know. I will tell you, it's not exact. You're learning just as much as they're learning. And so as a process, there's a lot to learn with education, the legal mumbo-jumbo, the requirements, and how all the organizations work. What I would highly encourage you to do is talk to other homeschool parents. Find out what they do. And then what you can do is when you come to, let's say, the curriculum, you say, well, that curriculum option worked well for my son because of this. And you would be able to identify and say, well, that's not my son, but it might be someone else's. And so to eliminate that. At the same time, you may say, hey, you may be talking to another parent, and they said, my child really struggled in this area. And you're like, man, that's the exact thing my child's struggling in. And you find out, hey, this is a potential match, and you try it out. You say, well, what if I choose the wrong curriculum? That's okay. Don't worry about it. Generally, when someone comes off of homeschool, it takes a while to get what we call the school system out of homeschooling. And by that I mean, and there's nothing wrong again with the school system, it's just the way they process and do things. We, in the homeschooling environment, your goals are different. See, they have to mark things by grades and they set up goals for classes, whereas you're setting up a goal for your child to learn a particular function or technique or truth. And so you are willing to stay on it as long as you need to. And if they get it real quick, you can move on. If they don't, then you can stick on it just a little bit longer. So those decisions are yours. Sometimes you make the right decision. Sometimes you make the wrong decision. And we never like to make the wrong decision, but you will mess up. You will have frustrating days in homeschooling. Just as you do with your child if they're doing homework, guess what? You're going to have frustrating times when you're doing schoolwork. It's all just part of it. There's some other things, and if you have questions, feel free to let us know. The next video is all about our school, a little bit more about ECA Shiloh, the things that will help you learn and grow, and I hope this video helps. Let us know if there's any other way we can help you. God bless you.